Hello again, Steve here, and I want to talk today a little bit about Trump's national emergency and how this relates to cognitive dissonance. Now, cognitive dissonance is a term that has been talked a lot about in so many different forums, which is that we can somehow believe one thing over here and then believe something else over here, and somehow they can coexist even though they're in contrast with one another. I'll demonstrate this from what I understand of the term anyway by telling a little bit of a story about, which is unrelated to this, but just to get an idea. Somebody I know, brother of mine, he's involved. He's an engineer, and he was working down in Utah at one point, or in that area, whatever. And he was working with a bunch of Mormons. And the Mormons believe, apparently, I could be wrong on this. Somebody might want to set me straight on this, but the Mormons believe that the Earth is 6,000 years old. I believe that's my understanding. Now, there was some geologists who were there, who were Mormons. And he was saying it was odd because you could go into their office and on their wall they had geological time going back millions of years, billions of years perhaps. So when they were geologists, that's what they worked with. They worked with geological time. And they go down to their temple and now they're working in, I don't know what kind of time. They're working in, Mormons' time. 6,000 years. That's their geological time should have ended 6,000 years ago, but it doesn't. Of course, that would just be a hair thin amount of time on that chart. So this is kind of a state of cognitive dissonance in that one can hold two fundamentally contradictory ideas in one's mind in the same day or the same moment, even sometimes, depending on what they're doing. Which, I think it's helpful for us to at least recognize that this happens within us, and to just be, at least the starting point is to be aware of that. I'm not sure what to do with it. That's a discussion for another time. But just to be observant of it, be observant of our nature, to be basically dishonest with ourselves in the moment. And there's something we can learn about ourselves with this, I think. Now, how does this relate to Trump's signing of the state of emergency? Well, it has to do with this wall thing that everybody's freaking out about, right? And of course, the cognitive dissonance here has to do with the outrage over how, you'll hear it in the media. It'll be crazy today, probably. How the media will get outraged, and so many people will get outraged who are, propagandized by them. That this is some sort of a dictatorial edict that Trump is coming down with, that we're going to build a wall no matter what, whether Congress agrees with it or not. Now, I agree with that. It is. It is dictatorial. And I don't agree with it, with that sort of behavior. However, my question is, and here's where the cognitive dissonance comes in, where were the outrage mobs when Obama was signing his state of emergency uh, decrees or whatever, which he did. I believe he signed about 4 of them, and they still stand today. And the funny thing of it is that part of Trump's national emergency is just a rubber stamping of Obama's state of emergency, and but that'll be buried in the media won't mention that, of course, because there was no outrage against Obama. This has nothing to do with Trump signing a national emergency. It has to do with the scare tactics the media is using, that Trump is somehow this evil character. They've created a caricature, and they have to uphold it, even though over and over and over again they're proven wrong. So, but this is the cognitive dissonance that goes on, is that we will have the same activity that Trump is doing, Obama did. No outrage by those who would be outraged at what Trump is doing when Obama did it, but they're outraged now. That is cognitive dissonance. That is holding two ideas that are similar in the mind, but completely different reaction. So it could be the same reaction to different things. It could be different reactions to the same things. It's whatever it is. It's like things that don't agree with each other, that make no logical sense, are held at the same time. Just like, when the Mormon believes, when he goes to work, that everything is billions of years old. When he goes to his church, he believes it's only 6,000 years old. It's a dissonance. It's a cognitive. Or I knew somebody else who was a very, very scientifically educated individual who believed in the historical truth that Jesus was born of a virgin. I mean, I get it if somebody believes that in terms of a metaphor or some sort of a story, an allegory or whatever, but to believe that it's historically true and there's nothing wrong. And her point was that there's nothing actually wrong with believing something like that. No, I think there is something wrong with that. It's called cognitive dissonance. It is mental delusion, right? So anyway, now when I see what happens with this cognitive dissonance too is that people, it's very sort of like a team mentality, like a sports team mentality is either you're on our team or you're not on our team. So a few weeks ago, I was visiting somebody I hadn't seen in quite a while, and he's very much bought into this whole Russia collusion, Trump bad, blah, blah, blah sort of idea, right? Because that's mostly it. I don't think he's analyzed a whole lot of it. It's just what he's been told over and over again. And the whole echo chamber that he lives in, that's where they are. So I was talking about how we were talking about this wall. Of course, the wall, what that meant in this situation was Trump's wall, right? And I was basically speaking in favor of, not in favor, but acknowledging the effectiveness of walls. And to him at that point, he asked me at a certain point, so does that mean you're in favor of Trump's wall? And my response was along the lines of, look, this has got nothing to do with Trump's wall. I'm just acknowledging that walls work. And furthermore, so does everybody else that I know through their actions acknowledges that walls work. I then turned to him and I said, look, do you lock your door at night? To which he said, yeah, of course. But I could see the gears were starting to move because he realized, he may not have realized it in terms of analyzing it, but he realized it viscerally that his cognitive dissonance was beginning to unravel. And the guy's he's an honest guy, right? So if he was an emotionally manipulative socialist, he'd have gone on the attack and called me a conspiracy theorist or whatever, but he didn't do that. He was open to what I had to say. Because maybe he hadn't actually... A lot of times our cognitive dissonance, we don't take the time to actually analyze it. And this might have been the case for him. Sort of like, okay, you close your door if you don't want the weather to come in, but you don't lock your door to prevent the weather from coming in, because the door is already locked. It has the doorknob latch, which closes the door, but then you have to lock it. Why do you lock it when you go to bed at night? Well, the only reason why is so you don't have people coming in who you haven't invited, right? That door is part of a wall structure, and you close off that wall to protect yourself against those who you didn't invite, because you have no idea who could walk through that wall, through that door. So people, all these people, these outrage mobs, who are completely outraged about building a wall, they operate as though walls work all the time. You know, one of the funny guys that I find is this Obama character who's come out a couple of times against Trump's wall. And yet it's been reported that he's building this new house somewhere near Washington, and he's building this massive wall around it. In fact, he's hired security and everything to not let people down the street, to get anywhere close. Why? Because he wants to protect himself inside protective walls. And there are gunmen all over the place. You can't get near Obama. So these people are all hypocrites as far as I'm concerned when they talk about this. Now, on the greater issue, whether I do agree with the wall that Trump is building, of course I don't agree with it, because it's a statist thing. It's a huge boondoggle the government's going to get involved with, and it will be used eventually to prevent Americans from leaving. That's what the biggest challenge with this is. But the concept of the wall in general, I agree with the principle. The principle is that if an individual or a group of individuals agree that, we've built something here, there's this house or whatever, and we own it, right? And we don't want just people randomly wandering into our house, well, we can close the damn door and lock it. We have that right to do that. And the same goes for a nation. if a nation decides, provided it's everybody who decided, which of course they never do, but provided hypothetically they did, if they agreed that, hey, you know what, this is our nation, and we didn't agree that anybody else can come here, we can put a bloody wall across it and put troops sitting up on top with cauldrons of hot oil and guns or whatever pointing down. I mean, that's what they did during the Middle Ages when the Muslims were stealing all a bunch of women from Europe and stuff like that. Is they built all these castles so that when the hordes of barbarians came knocking, they could all get inside these walls, these very well constructed walls, and they could point their arrows and spears and cauldrons of hot oil and boulders and whatever, and roll them down at them to keep them away because they weren't invited in. And people do this. We do this all the time. We do that to this day. We're doing it more and more all the time. I see more fences, more barbed wire and such like that. People are building stuff to prevent those who they didn't invite in from coming in. So this is what it is. So, I'm not outraged at all that Trump would sign a national emergency. He's talked about this for ages. I think pretty much every president for the last 50 years has done so. I mean, Barack Obama did it several times, and some of it having to do with security. I think he signed one to do with drug smugglers or something coming across the border. I mean, this was Obama. Where was the outrage then, right? And that's mostly what Trump is talking about, is all these MS-13 gangs and human smugglers and stuff coming across the border. That has to be stopped, right? That's what he's saying. So did Obama. And Obama had a national emergency. And it's funny because Trump is just inserting Obama's, national emergency into there. And of course, the mainstream media is not going to report on it because why? Because they uphold Obama as this saint, right? And he was just a warmonger like the rest of them. What much worse, though. I mean, I like to call him 100,000 bombs Obama because he got this peace prize. Then he went on to, pillory the Middle East with bombs. Anyway, that's a sideline. So cognitive dissonance. Human beings have this tendency because I think we're tribal, and we try to, inflate the things that support our way of thinking in one moment and deflate everything else. And we will do this in spite of sometimes holding extremely contradictory ideas, right? The contradictory idea in here is Obama could sign these things and everybody was fine with it. Like the vast majority of people were fine with it. The media saluted him as this great visionary. Oh, what a wonderful thing. He's signing this thing. And then basically Trump does the same thing and they're pulling their hair out. Well, that is cognitive dissonance, folks. So I think for us, in terms of our quality of life, is to recognize this and be like this individual I talked to about the wall recently, to be willing to have the cognitive dissonance within our brains unraveled and be okay with it because it's us improving. It's us observing our tendencies to get mixed up with all kinds of funny ideas and not want to challenge them because, our team is winning or we think we want to win our team, whatever. But it's not helpful in the long run, I don't think, for ourselves to be wrapped up in completely contradictory ways of thinking. So, something to consider anyway. Steve here, going great chatting. I really appreciate all the people chiming in and, like, subscribe, and comment. That all helps, apparently. And we'll talk again soon. Bye for now.